All right, so today I'm working on a paper so large that it barely fits on my screen. Let's see, if I zoom all the way out, you can see some more wires and water bottle and mouse and things. But this is the size of hexagon that I'm working on today. And I'm going to be folding a alternate ending version of Chiva Rumbera, which I released a tutorial for earlier this year. And got to be really careful when I start out to make sure that I'm on the side of the paper that matches my crease pattern where I calculated my rotated grid, because you can see this is not lining up with the edges. So I'm starting here on the front side, and I need to find my pinches on the side. There we go. To find the center, and I'm going to start with an open hexagon twist. And this is another of these live folding type videos. So I'm going to be folding pretty much at full speed. I expect to get most of the way through this pattern today because it is simple twists at reasonable spacing. And like you can already see in the chat, this pattern is going to be part of like the greater advent of Tess this year. It's going to be, the crease pattern is going to be included in the ebook. And for those of you who haven't heard about Advent of Tess, this is a daily folding challenge that I run each December, where every day I release a video tutorial and you fold progressively harder things each day until you reach Christmas Day. So it's December 1st through 25th. And hi, Early. Yeah, this is a ginormous grid. It's only 72 divisions, which when I've worked on this scale before, I've typically done like 144 divisions. And yeah, that's its whole other thing. It takes twice as long to do a grid with 144 divisions than it does for 72. And yeah, that was a big project. I do like one of those a year. Maybe towards the end I can get out all of the big ones I've ever done, because they're sitting right beside me. But for now, let's get this folded. So I'm doing open hexagons with closed triangles at tube pleat spacing. And because this is a variation on Chiva Rumbera, the next hexagon, or I should say the next twist will be a hexagon, and it will be an open hexagon on the back. And the crazy thing about these open hexagon closed triangle patterns, because it's all going to be open hexagons and closed triangles, is that when you have this open hexagon closed triangle weave, you can pick any hexagon and the triangles that surround it and flip them to the other side of the paper as you're putting them in. It would be much harder if you already have the twists folded. And so you can take any points in the broader pattern and flip them over. And so this is an infinite family of patterns, just this technique of using the open hexagon with the closed triangle. And you can do that no matter what the spacing is between them. So you could do this with a basket weave type thing, which is what we saw with inversion, the last live folding session that I did. And yeah, so there's some extra challenges working with this size of paper. Yes, so for Advent of Tess, I see your question, Chris. It's going to be on hexagons and mostly 24 fold grids this year. So the first one and the last two will fit nicely on 16 fold grids, but the rest of them you'll want 24 fold, so 24 grid divisions. And I'd recommend something a little bit bigger than what I used for the demo pieces. So this is one of the demo pieces here. It's really tiny. And that's with the mini size of hexagon. And what I would recommend to use instead is something at least the small size. So I'm talking about the sizes of hexagon templates that I have on my website. And maybe even a large size, depending on how comfortable you are with the grid. But there's no need to go ginormous. So there's lots of options. I'm going to be doing the tutorials on this small size hexagon, which conveniently you can get 2 of that size of hexagon from a sheet of Skytone paper. The 19 by 12.5 inch Skytone that I saw on my website. It all works together. So from here, I'm doing my next hexagons on this side. And my next triangles will be over here also. So with this ring around the center, I'm not gonna get lost. So earlier about your question, is it an A2 sheet? I'm not entirely sure what size A2 is, because I'm in the US and haven't spent a ton of time where people use the A sizes of paper. But this particular sheet is twice as big as the 19 by 12.5 sheets that I mentioned earlier. It's 38 by 25 inches. So it's not a size at all, but you can get an idea from those measurements. So if I tried making a sampler of patterns made by reversing's, there's a couple patterns that I have that use this idea kind of implicitly with a denser application of symmetry, but I haven't done like a massive one that has just a few spots switched. I'm going to be working on actually a whole series of massive pieces that use only open hexagons and closed triangles. So that will come out to more of a sampler effect once I get all like 25-ish of them done. And actually, speaking of A sizes in Europe, I will be coming to Europe next month. I'm going to be one of the special guests at the Ultimate Origami Convention in Lyon, France. So if anybody does want, say, Skytone for folding Advent of Tess, then let me know and I'll make sure to bring some along for you. I'm going to be selling the paper through Origami Shop at the convention. And then if you can't make it to the convention and need it shipped somewhere else, send me an email and we'll work out those logistics. But yeah, I am going to Europe for a short period of time next month. Yeah, very exciting. And yeah, the 19 by 12.5 inch paper that I typically use to cut my hexagons is larger than typical US printer paper, which would be 8.5 by 11 inches. So that would itself be closer to an A3, and then this one would be, I guess, well, I don't actually know, so I won't hazard a guess of whether this sheet would be closer to an A2 or an A1. But if someone wants to look up and write in the chat what 38 by 25 inches would be closest to in an A size, that would be useful information. So back to like these open hexagon closed triangle patterns. Chiva Rumbera is the pattern that basically swaps most of the hexagons to the other side. So there's a couple different ways of viewing it. And then so far, it looks like I'm setting up for another pattern called convection, and the difference between Chiva Rumbera and convection in what I've folded so far is that Chiva Rumbera has these outer triangles back on the same side as the first triangles. And convection has these triangles on this side. The other difference is that Chiva Rumbera treats these hexagons as positions of threefold rotational symmetry, and convection treats these as positions of twofold rotational symmetry. So, okay, we've got those A measurements in the chat. So looking close-ish. So the A2 is looking close-ish to yeah, I think the A3 is kind of close to the size I usually use to cut my hexagons, a little bit small relative to the size I usually use. And then, yeah, we get into all the different sizes. So this next ring around the center, I'm going to have to really concentrate to figure out which twists are on which side. I know the hexagons are all on this side, and the inner triangles are also on this side. I just need to figure out which of the outer triangles are actually on the other side. But I can start by saying this hexagon is going to be here, and those triangles are both going to be on this side. And the confusing thing is I drew the crease pattern from the other side of the paper, so that the central twist is on the front side. And that's actually one of the things, coming back to Advent of Tess, that I'm doing slightly differently this year, is that instead of drawing all the crease patterns so that the central twist is on the front, I drew them so that the confusing parts are on the side that you would fold them from. So there's a couple patterns where there's some central twists and then hybrid hexagon twists on the other side of the paper. So I drew the pattern so that the hybrid hexagon twists are on the side you're looking at the crease pattern from. Okay, so if I look at this on the side that I've drawn the crease pattern, then my threefold triangle is that one. Okay. Yeah, and it looks exactly the same as several of the others. And I need to make sure that I fold this next step correctly, or it won't line up with the edges of the rotated grid. And I don't have a ton of this paper because the manufacturer discontinued the color. So I want to make sure I don't mess this up. Just double checking. Okay, this triangle has to be going down, going up into this hexagon, and that is going up into the threefold triangle. Okay. Hold on to that. That is my threefold triangle, and I am not marking the paper. So if that's, then that is okay. And have that one. And this one. So the rule that I'm noticing is that the pleat of this hexagon opposite the threefold triangle is going to the hexagon on the, or sorry, the triangle on the other side at close spacing. And I'm only going to hit one triangle on the other side per edge on this ring around the center. Yeah. So then think that, yes, should be a triangle on the other side. Because that's the threefold triangle, and, well, yes, yeah, long distance on this one, and that'll be going to the threefold triangle. Got it. So yes, simple twists, complex structure. Complex structure made more confusing because it's all simple twists. And I'm going to go ahead and flip over to squash that one. Back. And now I can confidently say that this first hexagon has both of its triangles on this side. Yeah, that's the trouble when you have a pattern that's so flexible. You have full opportunity at every moment to mess it up. It's not forcing you to do one thing or another. And this one is coming back to a triangle on the other side. Yes. Because these are the threefold triangles and the opposite pleats to them are going the short distance to the triangle on the other side. I'll zoom in a little bit. Now you can see more of the texture as I'm working on it. I was kind of debating for a second, like, which way do I want to approach this set of parallel plates? But it's a flexible enough pattern, it doesn't matter. And I already figured out the sequence of like this side or the other side from this direction. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or wants to chat more about Advent of Tess, I think I'm past the danger zone in terms of figuring out what goes where. So I have a few brain cells to spare for talking. So it's harder to open the plate overlaps on this massive paper because it's so far from the edge. This one's going to be the triangle wrap. Get another peek at what's going on this side. So yeah, it really is this weave texture with these bubbles of twists popping in from the other side. Kind of fun. And one of the funny things about like figuring out that this chunk of twists can just pop over to the other side is that I designed several patterns that incorporated that before I realized that it was a thing. So kind of anytime I figure out something new, it's because I stumble into some patterns that use a technique and then only later figure out that it is a technique. So yeah, do I always display my origami tessellations flat? Yeah, I have so far, mostly because of backlighting. It's really hard to light something, and well, also because of trying to keep it in place. Like there's a lot of floppiness to the paper, and I would have to either like really secure it onto some material, or I don't know, dip it in epoxy or something to get it really secured in place while it's in more of a 3D state. But for example, these open hexagon twists, they could just stay puffed up, or could be displayed puffed up. And that would be an interesting way to do it. But yeah, I've pretty exclusively displayed my pieces in a flat state. Yes, this paper is Skytone. This is actually the size that it comes from the manufacturer, the 38 by 25 inch size. And then I have it cut down professionally to the 19 by 12 and a half for the paper cuts. So thankfully, I had ordered a bunch of like sample sheets of the larger size in various colors that have since been discontinued. Like this gold and pink. I didn't get any of the green, unfortunately. But now I have a stash to hold at least this series of pieces and see how that works. But yeah, unfortunately, what I've figured out is, you could totally make a cylindrical lamp out of a tessellation. I've seen some people do it. One of the considerations with that is, are you going to be picky about your pattern matching up as it meets on the other side? And that you could use like a striped mirrored pattern and get that kind of automatically, but you would have to be very particular with your size, especially if you're working with a pre-existing armature for that cylinder and not something that you can size specifically to whatever size your tessellation happens to come out to. So since I have a preference for folding new patterns every time, I tend not to go for the framing methods that require a lot of calculation. But if you wanted to do the calculations and go for that, you totally could. So right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these triangles on this side. The next one is going to have to be over here. And as I open her up, I can pop that down. And I am really glad that I'm using Skytone instead of something softer for this, because you saw with that triangle wrap, I cannot reach in from the edge to reach that. So I had to rely on the paper kind of snapping in place from pushing at it at various places. And Spot, about the draping the tessellation over something, the thing to be careful about with that is that if you're draping over a surface, the surface has to be something that could be made from a flat sheet. So it can't be like a dome. It has to have that flatness. In math, it's called a developable surface. So that would be a requirement. And now, okay, I'm seeing the structure more now. Where these are my 3-fold points, that's my 2-fold point, and it's a bar that goes straight between them. I'm going to, so I've got this set of parallel plates that I'm going to work across. I'm going to go from the top to the bottom on this side. And that's going to be hexagon on this side with all of its triangles on this side. And what I chose to do on this pattern is to align the tiling breaks with the edge instead of the pattern. The pattern repeats, because you can't actually have a pleated border and align the pattern repeats with the edge on this one. So that I just put in a compound wrap to squash the triangle. My next triangle out here is going to be going through there, so I may as well set that up now. There we go. So how I conceptualized the structure before, like when I was drawing the crease pattern, is you've got this chunk of hexagons around a hexagon on the other side, and you're repeating that chunk, and it's repeating. The only part that's not part of those chunks is the triangle in the position of 3-fold rotational symmetry. And so from here, my next twist can be off of this triangle, and it's going to have to be the outer part of a chunk. And then it's going into the next repeat of the center. Oh, I left that triangle earlier. Yes. This one you could also fold with everything a spacing closer together, but you're going to have to deal with the ordering of overlaps. But if you did do it with everything a spacing closer together, you'd be working with a basket weave where these bars line up with each other instead of being one spacing offset. Just a fun fact. And if you do it spaced closer together, then you won't need as much grid. It will be more of a pain to fold. There are always trade-offs. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, the crinkling of the paper with the sky tone is just delicious. So I think, given the time, I'm going to try and finish this ring around the center. And that'll probably be it for the stream, but I'll do one more ring around the center to finish the piece, just so that all these chunks are complete. And the only reason why I wouldn't stick around for another 30 minutes and finish it out is because I would like to get some photography done today, and also have an office hour for my Tessellations by Tiles and Tessellation starter sequence students. And the light in my office is not going to be suitable for photography after that office hour. Dances with Aardvarks. I'm glad you're enjoying what you are able to watch. It's one of those crazy things that, like, you can take a piece of paper and fold pretty much any pattern on it, or rather, the patterns that you can fold on it without cutting, without glue, are infinitely varied. And so I don't feel limited at all by the fact that I'm transforming a single sheet of paper instead of putting pieces together. Yeah, real life stuff. Although thankfully, like, the origami tessellations are my full-time job. So the office hour is for tessellations. The photography is of tessellations. But it's still a lot of things to manage. Especially that pesky little detail about I have a west-facing window, and after 2 p.m. the light will be shining directly on where I want to take photos. Oh, Chris, Dances with Aardvarks is the name of the person that commented 2 comments above you. Ooh, tessellations on spheres. That sounds like fun. I saw some platonic solid representations on spheres done with tamari, which is a colored string wrapping technique. That was pretty cool. It was published at the Bridges Conference last year, by Carolyn Yackel. So they're, and actually these were the Catalan solids that she represented in Tamari on spheres, which is just fantastic. And there's so many fun things to look at when you get into like making these mathematical objects in physical materials. At least with the spheres, you can actually say when you're done. I'm just doing a finite subset of an infinite pattern. A sample, really, of what it could be in the infinite space. An excavated dodecahedron. Oh, so excavated as opposed to stellated. That sounds really cool. There's so many fun shapes that you can make with origami, either from one piece or multiple pieces of paper. I know someone who designs stellated polyhedra folded from a single sheet. And then one of the more impressive ones to me, actually, instead of the, well, I mean, the stellated, I think it was an icosahedron. It might have been rhombidodeca something or another. One of the more impressive ones to me was the cuboctahedron with fractal hydrangeas on each square face. So yeah, you can make your polyhedra with twists on the faces. And you can even do that from a single sheet of paper. It's kind of trippy. What I would, one thing that would be interesting is, and this is just like where my mind goes with it, with the twists, you always want to have the neighboring twist rotating the opposite way. So are there any polyhedra that are too colorable? And obviously you can have some wiggle room on that because you don't need to connect all of the, well, okay, for the pattern's sake, you should connect all of the edges. But this is a property that I know applies to many tilings, but I don't know how many polyhedra it applies to, the two colorability. Yes, you can absolutely fold an Islamic pattern, especially rosettes. My friend Ricardo, his username on Instagram is Kamikyodai, Kamikyodai, I believe. And he, like, his whole thing is folding Islamic patterns with origami. So there's a hydrangea cube where you take like 6 hydrangeas and put them together. And then this cuboctahedron I'm talking about was folded from a single sheet of paper. with hydrangeas on all 6 faces, all 6 square faces. And it's just kind of mind-blowing. And the name of the guy who did the cuboctahedron, the hydrangea cuboctahedron, is John Singer. That's Szinger. But yeah, there's a couple people. I think John Montrol did some single sheet polyhedra. There's so many cool things that you can do with origami. Now, if you want to go extreme with the hydrangeas, there's always the hydrangea icosahedron, where you treat the hydrangeas like Sonobe units. You could try and figure that out from a single sheet of paper. That you would have to hide a lot of layers to do that. But it is possible. I feel fairly confident that it's possible. I've never seen it. Okay, so I'm on the last set of parallel pleats for this ring around the center. And I'll just finish up this ring and leave it there. But you've got a pretty good sense from what's folded already of how that pattern is going to continue. And one of the nice parts about starting from the center is that by the time you get to the place where there's so many pleat overlaps at the edge, you're also close enough to the edge, typically, to be able to grab them. But yeah, I didn't know that I would have this bar kind of going directly between the two repeats. And that's cool. Oh, and one tip for following along with tutorials, which this is not really a tutorial. If you think the paper is being suspiciously compliant with whatever I'm asking it to do, look for the other hand that's under the paper. Yeah, this is massive. Yeah, a lot of the time, the reason the paper is happy to do what I ask it to do is because I've got that other hand behind that's reinforcing what I'm asking of it. The base folds is a grid of equilateral triangles. And specifically, it's 72 divisions from one side to the opposite side. And it's not parallel to the edges, it's offset. And for this particular pattern, I used a mark 2/3 of the way up the right side edge on each edge to set up the initial grid lines through the center. So that's as much as I'm going to get done in this live stream. I'm going to do another ring around the center to get these chunks all complete. And yeah, that's the Jupiter pattern. Let's see if I can get enough light under here to see some of the backlighting. Okay, so we can kind of gently see some. And thank you. But yeah, this, actually, yeah, I remembered what I mentioned earlier of pulling out other pieces I've done at this scale. Let me grab some of those. So they're right here. I've done a couple of them. The hexagonal ones I've done are this one. So you can see I thinned the grid down another division by 2. This is 144 divisions. And this one is also 144 divisions. So I did not get this much done in an hour. That took a lot longer. And these are also pretty cool from the back side. This one is a like further expansion on the idea of the pattern that I got the Joiselle Award for last year, where you have these chunks, and then those don't repeat directly, they repeat over here. So I've got a hexagon in there that is different than the central hexagon. And so it's this idea of symmetry extension on a hexagon, triangle, rhombus, triangle tiling. And this crease pattern is in the Advent of Tess ebook this year too, because the central bit is one of the patterns that I'll be teaching. Ripple effect, I want to say this made it into a previous Advent of Tess ebook. Not entirely sure, but it's got these lines of hexagons that go straight through. I've done some more massive tessellations, well, a couple for teaching, and then 2 more on a different paper. This is like a French marble paper, I think. And I wanted to get this pattern, and you can see they're so big I need to move the camera further out. And this is taking up my whole desk. And this pattern actually has these kind of water wheelie things, and they show up on both sides of the paper. So that's really cool. I named this pattern Water Wheels. And in order to set up the background grid, because this one is a square grid with diagonals, and a rotated grid, I needed to have another giant sheet just to get the right fraction on the edge. So I went ahead and folded a giant pattern on this one too. And this is how I found out that you can kind of sort of have a pleated border when you're working in the mixed squares and right triangles tiling. And these tilings, like, I explain a lot more in my Tessellations by Tiles course. But there's so many patterns that I would like to see in this larger format, but a piece like this easily takes a week to fold. So, and something like this, like, probably 2 weeks. So there's kind of a natural limit. I've set an upper bound for this open hexagon closed triangle series of 80 grid divisions, which is more than my typical 64 that I do on the smaller paper. But I mean, these are infinite patterns. You could do literally infinite numbers of grid divisions. So I had to just set a boundary somewhere. Yeah, a month to fold the grid is not far off for these 144 division craziness pieces that are going on. So that's kind of a direction that I'm looking to expand and create more of these massive pieces, more as art, instead of just displaying or teaching how you can fold the pattern. So paying a lot of attention to the borders and how the pattern alignment works with the border, and like all of these details that make it really stand out. So that's what's going on with all of these patterns. I hope you enjoy and have fun folding for yourself. So see you next week. I think next week I'm going to be talking about advanced twist techniques. My course all about like figuring out new things and then sharing them with updates every year or so, so you can stay on top of things, so that when say the Joiselle Awards come up, which the application period is open right now, or the next Origami Olympiad, who knows when that's going to be. When those things come up, you'll be ready and prepared to fold the most advanced twist-based origami tessellations. So you're welcome, Erlu. Happy folding, everyone, and see you next time.